Welcome back to Great Northwest Weaponry. This is Thomas, and today we've got a really cool piece with us. This is the Swedish Lahti M40. Swedish Lahti is kind of a colloquialism, I guess, not the official name. It would technically just be a Husqvarna M40, but it's a really cool piece, one that I'm really excited about. I've wanted some version of the Lahti for a long time. I'd love to get a Finnish L35 someday, but unlikely. They're terribly expensive. But before we go any farther into it, let's go ahead and hop over to the gun room and talk Lahti history. We have got a ton to unpack with this pistol, so I'm going to dig straight into it here. We're going to start with a little bit of just Swedish history. From 1814 all the way through World War II and beyond, Sweden practiced what is called armed neutrality. Most of us in the West know the term armed neutrality in reference to Switzerland and their glorious K31, K11 rifles, as well as their Swiss Lugers. But Sweden was in the same boat as Switzerland on this. They did not want to be involved, but they maintained a standing army that was very well equipped. Throughout World War II, it was determined, or more so at the beginning of World War II, that they needed to replace their very aging model of 1907 pistol. They called this the Automatisk Repetier Pistol M07, or model 1907. And I am going to be absolutely massacring some both Swedish and Finnish words throughout the course of this video, so I apologize, but I speak neither language. Both are very much in the realm of stuff that I could not even attempt to pronounce correctly, so I'm not even going to try at this point. I'm just going to read it as it looks to the best of my ability. So, Automatisk Repetier Pistol M1907. They had been using this gun for, coming on 33 years by 1940, and they very much wanted something new, and they were surrounded by hostility to their south. You had a resurgent Germany who was invading their neighbors all around, and then their immediate, I believe, eastern neighbor, Finland, was under attack in the winter of 1939 to 1940 by the USSR, the Winter War that I've discussed a number of times on the channel at this point. It's definitely a conflict that I find a great amount of interest in. The first pistol that the Swedes would look to would actually be the Walther P38 from Germany. And in 1939, about 1,500 of these were delivered to Sweden under the name, I believe it was Repetier Pistol M39. And then Walther canceled the order to focus primarily on arming the Wehrmacht. So Sweden didn't really get what they wanted out of the deal there, started looking for a new design. Now, going back to the Winter War, Sweden had actually sent a volunteer corps of 9,000 men to fight in the Winter War on the side of Finland in 1939 to 40 in the winter. And the officers from this volunteer corps came back and highly recommended a variation of the Lahti pistol design be adopted by Sweden. Now here's where we're going to cut over to talking about the Lahti L35, something that it's a holy grail pistol for me. I want one bad. The odds of me ever getting one, very slim. They typically command a really high price. The last time I saw one, it was a complete rig, and I got a pretty complete rig for this this M40, but the L35 can command prices of like 5,000 to 7,000 I've seen. And that's not even an unreasonable amount for them. I've seen them for more in the past. So you definitely need to have somewhat deeper pockets to get your hands on the L35. But this design was worked on by, and I'm probably going to massacre this name, so I apologize, one Aimo Johannes Lahti. He began work on this design in 1929 when Finland determined that they wanted a new pistol design to replace what they mostly used, the Luger P08. Got one right here, and you can see some definite inspiration from the Luger to the Lahti design. I'm going to go ahead and put this back here, but there is a specific reason for the similarity, and that is because the Luger was loved by the Finns. They very much liked the design, but it didn't function very well in the cold, and that is one of the constraints under which Lahti designed his pistol, was it had to function, fairly well, at least, in the absolutely brutal Scandinavian winters, or you have weather so severe that it actually warps wood, as we discussed when talking about the Finnish Mosin M39. You need to account for that in your pistol design. And what he designed, though maybe somewhat over-engineered, is a very heavy-duty, kind of looks like a Luger. It actually looks quite a lot like a Luger, but doesn't really function much like one. Very robust pistol design. Again, maybe a bit over-engineered, but the officers from Sweden of this 9,000-man volunteer corps would come back and recommend the Lahti as their new pistol. And in 1940, Sweden would purchase rights from, I believe it was VKT, was the company producing the official Lahti L35. They purchased the rights from that company to manufacture the Swedish Lahti. Production began pretty much straight away, and it would be initially under a company that was not very experienced, if experienced at all, from what I've read, with firearms manufacturer, one Rosenfors Bruck. And they would make like a few frames and determined that between their lack of materials and lack of proper training in firearms manufacturing, they couldn't keep it up. So the contract would be reassigned to Husqvarna, of which is what you see before us here. Now we're going even deeper into it because there's just, again, there's a ton of history going into this particular pistol, especially considering we've never talked about a Lahti in the past. Husqvarna made a good amount of these from 1940 to, I believe it was 1946. I've seen conflicting numbers on this. I've also seen 1952 stated as when production ended, but there were other companies that made them, and there are some problems with some of them that I've read about. The actual reason they were replaced was problems with the frame cracking because of a new type of ammo that they were using. Those, from my understanding, are most prevalent in the Carl Gustav models of the M40, of which they changed the metal makeup of the gun, the actual material that the gun was made of, thinking that it would make it stronger, and what it actually did was make it more brittle. And then when they chambered a hotter 9mm in these guns, the frames started cracking. This one is part of a very specific contract that was sent to Denmark, of which you can trace directly that this was part of the Danish contract because of the D prefix in the serial number, of which we'll take a look at when we go to the tabletop here. Actual numbers of these produced is another interesting, and by interesting I mean difficult to suss out topic. I've seen the number of 100,000 thrown around, but when I've seen that number, it has usually been also accounting for VKT Lahtis that Sweden procured. And for all I know, it could also be lumping in the total amount of Lahti L35s used in Finland. So not a lot of them were made comparative to, again, say like the Walther P38, where hundreds and hundreds of thousands were made. The Lahti design in any variation is somewhat rare. The Danish police contract consists of a total of 10,000, and a pretty significant amount of these wound up in the United States. I've actually seen 3 personally, but they command still a pretty high price. Low compared to the absurd price of an original, mid-1930s to early 1940s VKT Finnish Lahti. But the Swedish Lahti is still a really cool example of the gun, and a lot of them are in very nice condition because Sweden, again, practiced armed neutrality. These guns would be kept in service all the way through at least the 80s and wouldn't be officially done away with until the 1990s, the early 90s, mind you, but it was the Glock 17 that would be the death of the Lahti in Sweden. With that massive information dump out of the way, I think we're about ready to transition to the tabletop here. We got a few markings to take a look at, and we're definitely going to have to take a closer look at this really cool holster and the amenities therein, as seen here. It's definitely a very complete rig that I got this in, so I was very pleased with that aspect of it for sure. But anyway, with that, tabletop. We're going to start our tabletop segment here talking a little bit about a few markings. There's not a ton here really, but first off, at the prefix of the serial number, you see a capital letter D on both frame and slide-ish. It's not really a slide. It's actually more so part of the barrel structure, but the body of the upper part of the gun. It's not really the same as most modern blowback pistols. It's a very different design, but that D is what indicates, as we'd previously mentioned, that this was sent to Denmark. It would have still been made at Husqvarna Wapenfabriks in Sweden. Also seen this very stylized letter H on the grip. Also indicates that this is a Husqvarna manufacturer. And we haven't addressed this yet, but yes, this is the Husqvarna that some of you may know as the chainsaw manufacturer. They actually started out, making pistols and rifles and such. There is another marking, and we'll see if we can get a good view on this here. This HV with the crown over it. That crown is the Swedish crown, indicating that it was inspected by a military inspector and accepted, after which point it would have been sent to Denmark. These export examples also will say Sweden on the side of the barrel above my finger there. Now, a little bit about the holster before we do the disassembly here. This is a very interesting holster. So how it all threads together, you've got this bar that goes through that plate there, and then you pull through your leather strap and hook it. It is very secure. I'm actually going to push the pistol aside for the moment, and we'll take that back here in just a minute. So open it up, you pull out, pull up, open. And then inside you've got spot for 2 magazines, and this did come with 2 original magazines. They are not, to what I can tell, numbered, but presumably these would have been the same ones issued with the gun, as this is a rather complete rig. And I'm going to put this one over here for the time being. And you've also got a cleaning rod that comes with the gun, which is handy, as well as this odd little tool. I believe this is to extract the firing pin, of which is not a part of the assembly or the disassembly that we're going to actually get into, but this is an odd little tool, and I cannot find an awful lot of information on it, honestly. So if you know more than I do about this, go ahead and feel free to post a comment. This could definitely be used to remove the grips. As you see, that groove slots perfectly into the grip there. So assumably, or presumably rather, I don't believe assumably to be a word, this is a manner of a takedown tool, much as what would be issued with Lugers back in the day. So that concludes what we're going to look at on the holster here. We'll put that back together, and this will go back on my little holster wall behind where I sit. And yeah, it's in very nice condition. But anyway, setting that aside, disassembly. First thing you're going to want to do is remove the magazine. It is a heel release, so you're just going to pull back on that latch there, and then that should free your magazine. Set that aside. This is a short recoil, so you're going to pull back until it stops and then pull down on that lever there. Now the whole top assembly should slide off. This isn't a slide in the traditional sense, but it's more or less a complete block. Push in this, you see this sliding piece here, you want it pushed in, and then your actual kind of a sliding plunger system, of which is actually engaged by this spring. It's held inside that slot. It is, it's very odd. It almost is like a hybrid of a blowback and whatever the heck is going on inside the Nambu. This piece can also be extracted. You see there's an arrow inside indicating the direction it should be facing, and the arrow should be facing towards the barrel when you reinsert it. And again, when you reinsert it, you want it to be seated all the way down and not in the outer position when you go to reinsert your slide, for lack of a better term. And then that simply slides in there. There is a groove that this should be lining up with inside there. So bada boom. Now we should be able to put it back on the slide. There is an annoying bit about this. This moves, so it doesn't always go into place as you want it to. We'll see how it does this go around. And you do want this ramp to be in the downward position when putting it back on the frame. Ah, it actually went all the way in without any issue. Now we're going to pull back, lock, and we're good to go. reinsert the mag. And that's all she wrote. Let's go ahead and take this back out to the range and put another mag through it. We are a little short on ammo in this video here, so bear that in mind. I think I mentioned that again as soon as we get back out to the range, but regardless, here we go. Let's put another mag through and show you how to load it and unload it and so forth. We're only doing 5 rounds per mag today, even though these do hold 8 per mag. The reason is very simply, I ran out of ammunition. We've got an empty in the gun right now, so you've got a heel release. You're gonna just push back with your thumb and then pull the mag out. And the holster has mag pouches for 2. There's mag number 2 loaded to 5. And with this, the way that it is beveled on the inside, you can just put straight in and push. And you want to make sure that it's seated all the way down. This is you pull straight out the back. It's kind of reminiscent of somewhere between a broom handle and a Nambu Type 14. So rack it, your safety is right there, and let's go ahead and test that and see if it actually works. All seems well. Got a squirrel on the log. Tempted to do some target practice on the squirrel. Is that horrible? Anyway, safety off and 5 rounds. Locks open on empty, and to drop the slide, I'm just going to pull back and let it fall forward. And you can reinsert the mag and she's good to go. It's a really cool piece. It's one that I'm, again, just so happy to have finally got one of these. It came at the right time, as is always the case when I'm able to actually pick up a gun. It's just a matter of being at the right place at the right time and having the money available at that time, or being able to get the money in short order. So yeah, another one that I'm lucky to have in my collection. Thank you all for watching Great Northwest Weaponry. It's been Thomas, and I will see you next time.